And hello and welcome. My name is Martin, and in this tutorial, what we're going to do is we're going to use the cinematic to create a moving platform, which is going to get us from one end to the other. Now, this is a level that we set up previously. We have a trigger box here, which is moving us back into the original level, which is the My Game level. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to modify this level a little bit, make it a little bit bigger, so then that way the jump is not so easy, and we can actually set up two platforms to move. One that's going to move with just a pure cinematic, and then the other one that's going to move when we shoot a target. So then that way we actually have to trigger that event not with ourselves, but with actually something else. So in this tutorial, we're just going to set up the one cinematic to get us across halfway, and then the other one we'll set up with the second. The next tutorial will be with the trigger box that'll work off of the projectile. Okay, so let's make this box a little bit bigger. So I'm going to just increase the size of everything just a bit. Okay, now it's just a matter of pulling the walls apart. Okay, from here what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset our starting point somewhere else and move our first person player over that platform. Okay, then we're just going to grab this plus the trigger box and we'll move it to the other side of the room. Okay, the only other thing that I want to adjust is the kill zone. Let's go ahead and make that a little bit wider so it takes up the whole floor. And I'll leave a little marker like that, just a little piece on the inside, just so that I can see where it is visually on this. The only other thing that I might do is I might adjust the height of these a little bit higher, so then that way our player won't be able to fall out. So let's go ahead and make these, let's say 700. Okay, so now we have an area that our character won't fall out. The platform that we need to get to is quite far away. Let me go ahead and dress that up a little bit better. And let's go do that to the other side because, nope, that side's nice and clean. Okay, fantastic. All right, so now everything is nice and we're ready to go ahead and do this. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to need to do is we are going to need to create a geometry, which is going to be our platform. We're going to then use the geometry to create the mesh or the material around it the way that we want it to. Once we've got it as a geometry, we're going to convert it into a static mesh. And then from there, we're going to turn it into a blueprint. Now, what the blueprint will allow us to do is to create a box collision around the outside of it. That box collision will allow for our character, the pawn, to sit on that. And because it is a static mesh wrapped around a blueprint, we will then be able to use the cinematic to be able to get it to move. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a area where we're going to move to. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this one more time. We're going to hit Control C, Control V, And I'm going to put that, let's say, over here to the other side. And I'm going to go ahead and rotate it just to put the nice side this way. Okay. Yeah, it looks like that didn't work either. Looks like we still have... Okay, so we'll go ahead and clean that up. So select all adjacent surfaces. And I should have grabbed the concrete first. So concrete, select, grab all adjacent surfaces. There we go. So now everything's concrete. Okay, so what we need is a platform to go from here to there. So we could just grab another geometry and put it out on the floor, but I can just reuse this one. So we'll actually grab the one that has all the geometries done with the materials all the way around it. So we'll go Control C, Control V. This will be our moving platform. I'm actually going to make this the X a little bit smaller. So let's go, let's say, so it's more square. Not that it's a perfect square, but it's more square. And then this will be what moves back and forth. So what I want to do is I want to line this up to the starting position and make sure that this, you know, just looks well. Okay, so there's our platform. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to convert this into a static mesh, because right now it's a geometry, which will not be, which we cannot control with the cinematic because it's not an object that's in the game. So I'm going to go back to content, and so we have this platform selected. We're going to create a static mesh. In doing so, it's going to ask us where do we want to save this new object in our game. I'm going to go to a_my_stuff. And in the other examples, I've been calling this swamp broom. I'm going to call this spiky, let's call it room 4. I don't know what to call this. Level 4, I guess. So we'll just go in here and we'll call this platform level 4. And we'll call it platform 1, level 4. Okay, so this is level 4, and this is our first platform. All right, we'll make sure that it goes into a folder. So we're going to right click and create a new folder. So I went to a_my_stuff. I right clicked on it, new folder. And we're going to call this level 4 level 4 room. That's fine. And with that one selected, that's where we're going to create the mesh, and we're going to put it in there. So now if I go into my a_room or a_my_stuff, and I look for, where is it? Level 4 room. There's the static mesh that we just created, right? So to verify that, I'm going to select the static mesh again, and I'm going to see up here that it indeed does say that it is details and a static mesh. Now, from there, what we're going to want to do is, with the object selected, we are going to want to convert this into a blueprint. So we're going to right click on this, and again, we're creating something new. And so we're going to leave all of this alone. We're just going to see that it is giving us a new name, where it's going to be putting a blueprint at the end of what we've called this. We're going to go ahead and select. And now what we have is we have a blueprint. And with that blueprint, we now have the object that we created earlier, the static mesh, and we have the ability to be able to set up additional code to it if we wanted to. What we do want to do here, however, is add a box collision. So we're going to right click left click in add components. We're going to scroll down until we get to box collision. We are going to add that, and then we are going to make this more or less the same size as the box that we have. So then that way the area that the character is able to walk on matches the size of the box. Okay, there we go. Now from there, we also want to make sure that this box collision settings are set correctly. So we're going to see that right now it's overlapping everything. So essentially this would allow for the character to fall through the floor. So what we want to do is we want to go to custom, and inside custom we want this to actually ignore everything except for the pawn and maybe the first person projectile. So that way it looks like when we shoot at it, our stuff is bouncing off of the stone floor or the platform. So we have a blueprint. That blueprint has a box collision. That box collision is in the shape of the mesh. We have checked and created a custom collision for this. We want to make sure that we are going to, oh, I'm sorry, not overlap. We need to block. I apologize. I'm glad that I went back and looked at that. Not overlap, because that would just make us fall right through. We need to block the character, and at this point we now should not fall through this floor. So if I hit compile and save, we can actually go and check this by going in and pushing play and just seeing whether our character is indeed able to walk on this surface without falling through, and we can. So fantastic. Now with that, what we want to do is make sure that this is indeed the blueprint, that it did switch us over to the blueprint when we created the new object, and it did, and we can see that because it is labeled blueprint up there. Okay, so with this object selected, the next thing that we want to do is we want to create our first cinematic. So when we create a cinematic, we're going to come up here to the top menu. There's cinematics. We see that we have an options menu, the downward arrow, and we have two options. So we're going to select add level sequence. We're not going to do a master sequence yet. We may not actually do it for this class. We'll just set up a bunch of individual sequences. This would be like several things that you want to do that need to be linked together. Here, these are going to be independent events. So we're going to add a level sequence. It again wants us to store this. This is something new that's being created in the game. So we're going to call it same thing we've been doing, which is I guess level 4 underscore platform 1, and we'll call this sequence 1. Okay, so then that way we know that it's a sequence. We are going to put this again with a underscore my stuff. We are going to put this in the folder that has to do with all the stuff that's associated with this level, with this room, and we'll go ahead and save it in that folder. Okay, so once we've done that, we'll see that we get a pop-up box. That pop-up box is basically a timeline. In this timeline, there's a couple of things that we'll look at. The first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that show time as is set as seconds. And the way I got there was I went here to this thing that says 30 FPS. This is actually also got a downward arrow, and this is dealing with frames per second. So frames per second, there's 30 frames per second. So if you've got 1 second, you got 30 frames. You got 2 seconds, you got 60 frames. If you've got 3 seconds, you've got 90 frames. 5 seconds, 150 frames. And it just becomes very painful to have to remember those numbers and have to do that math. It's so much easier if the timeline and the numbers associated with the timeline corresponds to real time or time that we're associated with, which would be seconds. So what you do is you would click here, you'd scroll all the way down. The first option here would be show time as, and then select seconds. This will make sure that your timeline is now in seconds. Okay, now because we still have this object selected, we can right click in this area and we can see that there are different things that we can add. We can add a actor to the sequence. So we can say, okay, when this happens, we want to add, and then anything that's available in your world outliner that is something that can be automated will be available here. So what we actually want to do is go to add platform blueprint, select that. And what that does is it puts this object on the timeline, and now we can move it because we have a time we can associate. This is where we want you to be here, time 0, and we want you to take this much time to get across. We want you to be at that location for so much time and then move back, right? So that's going to be the movement or the plan of movements that we want to do with this particular platform. And so we have the platform in its starting position, and we have the platform on the timeline. So what I'm going to do is if you don't see the word transform there, you will have to go to add track, and there's a whole list of other things that you can with this object automate. So this is very specific to this object. And what we want to do is we want to automate the transform. The transform, remember, is the location, X, Y, Z, your rotation, your pitch, yaw, and roll, and scale, which would again be X, Y, and Z for the scale. So we're going to hit transform, and again, with the object selected, you can see that it selected it there on the timeline. We are going to hit the plus button on the transform. And what that does is we'll see that a collection of dots has materialized, and those dots then give us the X, Y, and Z values for where this object is right now. Now,
Hello, Moto.
excuse me. So now that we have where the position of this brick is, or where the platform is, what we want to do is we want to give the character, let's say, 2 seconds to be able to orientate where they are in the game before this thing starts to move. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here, and I'm going to type in 2, which then takes me 2 seconds into the timeline. From here, what I'll do again is I'll record the points. So basically what we're saying is from whenever this thing starts to 2 seconds, leave this in its position. From there, we then want it to then move across over to the other end. And in order to do so, what we'll want to do is, let's say this is going to roughly take about 3 seconds to move. So if we are at 2 seconds, 2 plus 3 would give us 5. So I'll type in 5 seconds. Now, what we realize is that we're starting to run out of space on our sequence. What we can do at this point is extend the sequence out and make it longer. To do this, what we'll have to do is change the end here, and let's say we're going to give ourselves 15 seconds. We will now see that we have a much longer timeline if we pulled it out, but that we still have an area of gray here and an area of gray here. The reason that area of gray is there is because the timeline itself is still technically only from the end point, which is this green point right here, which we can grab and change. And let me put that back to its original position. And our end point. So this is going to be this one right here, the red equivalent to it. So for right now, if I want to, I should be able to come in and type in, let's say 10 seconds. And you'll see that, and that didn't actually take us there. So you know what, we'll just do this. We'll grab this and we'll move it physically to 10 seconds in. And now we have a timeline that is from 0 to 10 seconds and a much longer timeline, correct? Okay, so now we're going to go back to 5 seconds. And we are going to, with the timeline indicator already there, move the object to its new position. So from here, what I'm going to do is line that up to the best of my abilities. Quickly, we're not going to spend too much time on this. You can clean it up later. Okay, so we've got a nice little move. From there, this is the new position. So again, what I want to do is go to transform on the timeline. And with this in the position that I want it to be in, I'm going to record where it is. Now, from here, we can see that we have now developed a line between the starting point and the ending point. And if we move our timeline, we see that our first 2 seconds are there. They don't move. It takes 3 seconds to move across. And from here, what we want to do is we want to give the player enough time to jump off the platform before it goes back. So let's give the player an additional 2 seconds. So 5 plus 2 seconds would give us 7 seconds. And since this is where we want it to be, we will go ahead and record again the points. Now, from here, it gets a little tricky because we could grab this and move it back, but we may not end up in exactly the same position. Now, we do already have the points that we want to move back recorded twice. We have them here and we have them here. So all we need to do now is grab those points, right click on them, say copy, and we're going to move, let's say, another 2 seconds down. So I'm going to move this back because I need more space on the timeline. Another 2 seconds would be 9. So we have to go to here to type in 9. That will take our playhead to the 9 position. And since we've already got these copied, we should be able to hit Control V and paste. And if it doesn't, right click on the timeline and hit paste transform, and the transform will give us all the information for the X, Y, and Z. And you'll see now that it has taken us back. So now if we play the timeline, 2 seconds there, waiting for the character, for the player to get there, 3 seconds across, 2 seconds in its current position, 3 seconds back. Oh, well, it's not 3 seconds. 3 seconds would actually be 10. So this is good because now I can just grab the points and move them down to there it is, to 10. So fantastic. So that mistake has actually allowed you to see how you can just grab the points by clicking and dragging across and moving them to their new position. Now, once there, we don't, if we were to give it another 2 seconds, this would actually stay a total of 4 seconds before it moved again, which is not what we want. The 2 seconds are already here, so we go 2 seconds not moving, 3 seconds moving, 2 seconds not moving, 3 seconds back, and then this would loop back around to the front end, and then it would play the animation again. So we don't need this additional time on the back end of the timeline, so we're going to grab the back, and we're going to make sure that our buttons actually end up on the left side, because if you do this, then it will never get back to its finishing points. So you do want to make sure that your endpoint is on the right of your last set of keyframes. All right, from there we'll just set the original time to 0. So that way it's at the beginning of the cinematic. And at this point we are done with setting points. We don't need to set any additional points. We can go ahead and close this particular window. And we will notice that 2 things have happened. We do have now that cinematic that we created, and if we click on it, we should see where it is. Double click on it and that will open up the box. And where did our cinematic go? Let's hit save, save all. See if that makes the cinematic appear. There should be a little icon that looks exactly like this that should be on the screen somewhere, and it is not. So because it is not, I'll just grab it and put it in there. That's very strange. It didn't put it out there for us, but that's okay. So we have a reference to this now in the game, and this essentially is the object that is associated with code in the details panel that will do additional things for us. One of the things that we do want to look at is with this object selected, I'm going to click it, go into its details panel, scroll down, and see that we can open the sequence from here if we wanted to. We can also rename the sequence if we needed to, but we also have certain things that it can do with playback. So one of the options that we have is autoplay. Since we're not triggering this event with anything, when the game starts, this will automatically start playing. So it'll go through our timeline and start doing it. From there, the next option that we have is the play rate. So maybe we put in 6 seconds and we realize that that was way too long and we want to half the time, so we put in 0.5. Or maybe we did it and we put 1 second take on this and it just zips across and it's way too fast. And so we need to slow it down. So we'll say take 2 seconds or take 3 times the amount of time to play that animation. So you can actually adjust time from out here. If you didn't do it correctly, let's say in your cinematic, and you want to make it a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, you can fit it that way. You can also offset the start time, which means that it will actually wait a determined number of seconds before the animation starts playing. The other thing you can also do is randomize the start time. So you can say click here and then it would just pick a random number and then start playing it. So these two basically do the same thing. The restore state we won't do anything with, and we do need to have the and actually we don't need the pause on end because the animation goes back to its starting point. So in this particular situation, we don't want the pause at end. Okay, so with all that done, we should now have a moving platform. So let's hit save. We'll hit save all here, and let's go ahead and push play. And we walk into our level. We waited 2 seconds too late. The platform moved across. It's there for 2 seconds. It takes 3 seconds to move back. We are now able to stand on the platform. So we don't have loop on turned on. So it only played the animation once and then it didn't do it again. So We're going to click on the cinematic again, autoplay. There it is, loop. Loop, we said don't loop. So if we missed it, then we wouldn't be able to continue playing the game. We would have to die and then restart the level. So in here, what we do have is two options, loop indefinitely and loop exactly. If you click in loop exactly, you have the ability to be able to type in how many times you want this to loop. So maybe you give the player 10 times before it doesn't loop again. Maybe you do it twice, whatever you want to do, or we can have it loop indefinitely, which means it'll just keep doing it. So now we should be able to push play, and we'll jump on the platform before it goes. It got over here. It's waiting 2 seconds. It's going to take us back. It waits 2 seconds, and it's going to take us back. So now it's indefinitely looping. We can get to the other side without falling into the kill zone that we set up down there at the bottom. And that platform is now moving. Yay! So now we have a working cinematic that works independently of anything in the game. It just, as soon as the level starts, it starts moving. So in the next tutorial, what we'll do is we'll combine this with a trigger box to make the platform move only when we have shot at something, or we're going to get something other than ourselves to trigger the platform, or to trigger with the trigger box. It will be the first time that we use something other than the pawn to trigger an event. Okay, so fantastic. I hope you've enjoyed the video and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.